right. Thank you for being here with Psych Your Way to Success. I am Claire,
And I'm Heather.
and we talk about a lot of the, I don't know, life, work, corporations, things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis through the scope and lens of industrial organizational psychology. We have a lot of fun, pretty much just kind of like a coffee shop talk, like we were talking about. Having, general conversation about the things that we, I don't know, have to face on a regular basis as well. So today we're talking about work-life balance. We have the opportunity to kind of discuss, I don't know, what that looks like and means to each of us. So Heather, I'll have you start us this time. What's work-life balance to you?
Yeah, I love this topic, especially right now as life is just so busy. And in general, I would think everybody thinks life is busy, but I think work-life balance is more of an ebb and flow. And
Yes.
what I mean by that is generally when people think of work-life balance, they think, okay, 50% of my time is at home, 50% of my time is at work, and then I have a work-life balance. But that's actually not true. I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you are at work more because there's pressing things that are happening at work. And sometimes you're at home more because there's pressing things happening at work. Like I definitely know when I had my babies, I was home more, you know, I just had to be, you know what I mean? It was just like they took a lot of my time just nursing and
You see,
taking care of them and
kids
just
do.
even healing my body, you know what I mean? Like it takes a while. And I still had to work. We were building a business, so it wasn't like I could just not work. But my work-life balance was more of being with my babies than it was physically at work, even though I had to still manage both. And then there were times when we were really busy building the practice that I probably put in, 18-hour days, like no
For
joke,
sure.
and with kids in tow, you know what I mean? Just kind of like babysitters and taking them to meetings. My daughter, actually, the other day, we were just talking about how I used to go around to different doctor's offices, and she remembers me introducing her as my daughter because I was like, I have to market. Well, like,
Yeah.
I really don't have a choice. And it's like so funny what she learned from that, even though it was really taxing on me to take them. Um, so
I like what you're saying here as far as it being an ebb and flow. I think I was in a mentor group that really talked about it not being a work-life balance, it was work-life harmony. So, because
I
that
love
balance is
it.
just, it's not what we really want it to be, like that 50-50 or that 8 hours and then done, cut, go home. Um, there's days where it's definitely going to be 10-hour, 14-hour days, and unfortunate as that is, but there's other days on that second half where it's like, hey, I'm cutting out early, or my family needs is a priority for me right now. I have a recital, or I have me time, right? Like whatever it is that you're choosing to do, I love that there is this, harmony in the way we are performing in our life, because stagnant isn't going to work either. Like not, it's not successful either. It doesn't, there needs to be that flex, that flexibility within each of us in our workplaces. It's kind of those boundaries we were talking about so many other times. So, yeah.
Exactly. And being able to recognize it. I think that's important
Mm.
because I think sometimes we get so caught up in the day to day that we're not even recognizing, am I stagnant? Am I overly focused on work? Am I overly focused on family? Like all of that it is important to really understand what you're doing, actually doing in a day.
Well, and as you speak about it, like I'm thinking about the holidays right now, right? Where a lot of us want to be home. Whether whatever holiday it is that you celebrate, we have a culmination of many holidays happening right now and the coming of the new year. And man, lots of things going on, lots of plans being made, lots of family coming into town. And that's when that becomes a priority, right? Like we've put in a lot of time over the year, maybe extra hours, whatever the case may be. And then be sure to take that break to make sure it's for the family or it's for you.
Exactly. And you know what? I always think about that too, because I think there should be more acknowledgement of when the work life balance has to be adjusted. So, for
Mhm.
example, in a medical practice, the end of the year is actually the busiest time because
Oh, totally.
everybody's trying to get in before their deductible ends. You know? So a lot
Of
of people have
course.
met their deductible and they want to get in and like so
Mhm.
I always found November, December to just be packed, which like you said, most people want to be home with their families. And so I always try to communicate a little bit better saying, okay, we all know the holidays are busy. So take
Mhm.
the time now during the summer months when they're not as busy for us. And, you know, like the March, April time, I don't know why they're not that busy either, but they're just not. Like, take those times to really connect with your family. And I'm sorry about
Yeah.
Christmas or Hanukkah or whatever holiday you
Right.
celebrate. But I think that also needs to be a topic of conversation that you're having with your employees of when your busy times are, because there are busy times in every industry and they're not all the same.
No, they're certainly not. I think that's a really key element here. They're not all going to be the same. I've worked for companies that were food manufacturing, and our high time was the winter. I've worked for other businesses that were more organic oils, and our high time was, February, March, April, May. It was just the dynamic. If you work in schools, if you work in construction, your high time is in the summer, or construction is summer, school is, the school year, whatever that looks like wherever you live. I couldn't agree more. Just make sure that you're mindful, super intentional about what it is that you're doing and why and when. There's a flow to it. There's a harmony that you can pull out if you're paying attention, I would say. And then if it's just not a fit for you, maybe that's a different conversation that you need to have with you and your partner, with yourself, you know?
Exactly. And you know, I always think like there are certain times in my life where work was busy and
Mhm.
I communicated properly and I said, "You know what? My stepdad was in hospice. You know, I just wanted to spend time with him." And I knew work was busy and I knew it was like it wasn't the best time, but luckily I'd put in all those hours previously and
Mhm.
I just communicated that I need to go have dinner every night with my stepdad. And that was important to me. And so a lot of times I would leave work early, go have dinner with him, or I'll say early, but 5. It's not necessarily early.
I mean, is that early? Yeah.
And then I would go back to work after having dinner with him. And
Mhm.
it was, I'm not going to say it wasn't hard to leave in the middle of a meeting or in the middle of like, I'll call it crisis mode. But it was what was important to me. And honestly, I'm so grateful that I was able to do that, one, and two, that I did do that.
Mhm. Well, and sure, I think even during busy times, again, I'm gonna bring it back every time to boundaries, right? Like having healthy boundaries, making sure you're being mindful of yourself and what the needs are for you, your family, and then of course, what are the needs for work, and are you meeting them, and why or why not? Talk about that. Figure out what's going on. I don't know. It's such a hard thing because I think we're seeing so many people demanding that they have 8 hours a day no matter what. And then when they want to cut out earlier, they just decide not to show up. Employers are like, "Oh, no, no, hang on. You haven't earned it yet." And there's like a shock and awe in, "What do you mean I have to earn it?" And I mean, generationally, we have what, 5 generations in the workforce, which is relatively unprecedented in the past because we have people working longer in their life than they expected to or than we have in the past. And we have people coming into the workforce early, 16 or so. And it's just, I think it's shocking for all of these generations to have to work together, and their expectations and the way they live their lives are so different. And now we're having to try to communicate with one another, not understanding that we're using different language, even though it's the same one.
Yeah, that is such an interesting point about the five generations. I hadn't really thought about that. And the communication and the desires are all different. And
Mhm.
um,
The lifestyles.
yeah, and just like where they are in their life, and them remembering when they were young parents or,
Hmm.
like, and saying like, well, I didn't do that when I was, you know, and how different, I mean, but just really how different things are,
Yeah.
from when they started working to now. I do find that when I put policies together that allowed people to go to their kids' important events,
Hmm.
it made the workplace so much better. The stress it puts on you to not be able to go see your kids play, which, I mean, generally speaking, those plays aren't like A-list worthy, but it's so important for that child, for
Oh,
like that parent shows up, and it is a big deal for the parent too. Like, I hate missing my kids' performances or soccer games or
mhm.
whatever, basketball game, whatever they're playing. I love being there, even though like it just means so much to your kid.
Yeah. I think so. One of the people I follow on Instagram is Jay Shetty, and he has such a brilliant. He posts quite a few brilliant videos, and one of them that is one of my most favorite was is every time he does it something similar, is how important it is to show up for children. And just there's a video camera on these kids that are, up for a recital, or they're up at the front, and all of a sudden they see their uncle or their mom or dad, whoever it is, show up, and they see them in the crowd and they make contact, and the change in their persona, their face, like they light up, and it changes everything about, oh my gosh, I'm no longer alone. So I totally agree with you there. If finding ways to make sure that you are showing up is part of making that harmony something so very special, and it makes it worth it in those longer hours that you're going to be able to do that. And yeah, it does relieve that stress. I've worked for organizations, and I'm sure anybody listening can maybe hopefully have that connection of, yeah, I remember working for this company that never allowed me to do it. Because when you said it, I went straight to that spot. I was like, oh my gosh, there is this one company that I worked for, and if I wasn't there and there was no exceptions, and I would get all of these marks, and eventually as a single parent, I mean, I can't maintain. That is not sustainable for me. My son gets sick, and it happens. So yeah, and then compare it to the times where I didn't have that, and they were flexible, and I was there for my parents when they didn't feel good, and whatever the case may be, plus my kid. It was pretty amazing. It was pretty fantastic. So it makes the hard times a lot easier to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great point.
Yeah, and I think it also like decreases burnout. That
Absolutely.
stress on your mind and body to not be there for your kid and then go home and then they're
Hmm.
upset. Every other parent was there and you weren't, it's just like it
Yeah.
wears on you a lot, and as a parent you want to kind of be there. Um
We already drive the guilt bus. I mean, on some level, whether you're like, whether you're a fur baby parent, if you're a parent or an uncle or an aunt or whatever you are, you're something to someone. And I hope you know who it is, you know?
Right. And just making sure that you understand what a work-life balance is, and taking the time out to prioritize both,
Yeah.
and be mindful of both. And so, I think even sometimes we get, I'll say lazy, or maybe it's not even lazy, but um, we just get stagnant in what we're doing and we're not realizing what the other options are. So I think if we can be cognizant of where we're at in life, when we have time that we can properly focus on work or focus on family, then it works out in the end, so that ebb and flow is sometimes we're working more and sometimes we're with our family more. And it's good to like practice. It could be daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. There's no set. And I guess that's kind of my whole point in this whole thing is it's not a set 9 to 5 we're working, 5 to 8 we're with our kids, and then 6 to 9 we're with our kids, and there's 50-50.
Right. Oh yeah. No, I
Like,
by the way, make sure to get 8 hours of sleep in there.
exactly. And work out and
work
eat
out.
healthy and see a therapist and
do all your grocery shopping and have all of it. I mean,
keep your house
the
clean.
hardest thing sometimes.
It is. And so just and giving yourself a little bit of grace, because some days we're going to be better than others. And it's all about just reviewing, like, how well did I do today? How well did I do this week, this month? Get feedback from your significant others. I mean, clearly your fur babies aren't going to like really give like verbal feedback, but they do give feedback.
We have those talking buttons now and they're working.
Oh, that's funny. That is funny, huh?
But I completely agree with you. I think it is one of those things that we probably need to be definitely better at. I know I do when it comes to giving myself grace, providing that space for me to, the road to success is, littered with failure, and we wouldn't be able to get there without it. So, find your way through that and realize that there's going to be longer days on either end, and it all should pan out in the end. If it's not, figure out why, figure out why that is. I would say, yeah, I know I'm thinking like top 3 for me. As usual, I go with top 3 like ways to get there. Healthy boundaries, understand where my time needs to be divided and who's important to me, recognizing what that is, and be intentional with everything that I'm going to do. Those are my top 3.
I couldn't agree more. I love it. I might say it a little differently, but they're all the same. They're the exact same thing, just like that, really focusing on planning and being mindful, and looking at it through the whole year, not just day to day. Sometimes we plan day to day, which is important as well, but really being thoughtful of like, what does my year look like?
Yeah.
And then going from there, having healthy boundaries.
Yep.
And I also think communication is super important. Communicating with those that you love. Sometimes you just can't be somewhere.
It's the hardest thing in the world to do too.
It is so hard. And I've had to have really difficult conversations with my 9-year-old son saying, I really want to be there, but I can't. I have these other obligations and I didn't know about this in time. And so it breaks my heart that I can't be there, but I just can't. And, although they're sad, they understand and they appreciate it. And these are the things I'm going to do because I'm not there. My girlfriend's going to be there for me. I'm going to have a recording of it, and I'm going to call you after it's over. I'm going to, and you send them some, there's ways to make that person in your life feel loved and thought about if you proactively do it. After the fact, it's not as like impactful. It's still helpful, but
the biggest thing here is going to be, how often are you doing that? Right? Like, are you doing it every single time and you never make time? And then it becomes less of a, it just becomes something that is just another thing that you missed, rather than just a moment where you're like, oh crap, I didn't make it. I'm so sorry. And it's forgivable. It's forgivable, right? Like, there's so much grace afforded in those moments. Whereas if you're doing it every single time and you're sure, you can apologize, but if you're apologizing and continuing to do the same thing, I mean, is it really an apology? I don't know. it doesn't feel like as a recipient, it certainly doesn't feel like it. So just, yeah. Empathy. Let's work with empathy. I will never stop preaching that. Anyway, so we're getting to the end of our 20 minutes. Heather, anything that you want to, like, lasting words about, on the topic of work-life harmony, work-life balance?
I mean, I would just say I want to reiterate that fact of just like communicating is
Yeah.
so important, and being mindful of what you're actually doing as opposed to just assuming you're doing it right.
Yes, yes. I think I forget who was that said it, that the trick to me, what was it? The downside to communication is the illusion that it ever happened in the first place. So yeah, I agree with you. Communicate, be clear, make sure you know what you're trying to be clear about. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for listening to us. Again, we are on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, and which one am I missing? Spotify, YouTube, Amazon, and
Apple?
Apple. Yeah, perfect. Same time. If you have any questions for us, reach out to us on LinkedIn. You can also reach out to us on individually on LinkedIn or through Spotify directly. So we look forward to hearing from you. Continue to send us your topics, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one.
Thanks.